apply in addition to mandated procedural meeting requirements. You'll be able to see the minutes in progress on your individual screens via the Zoom link sent to you today. We'll also be using show of hands to indicate your desire to withdraw an item, to gain my attention or to speak. I ask you to raise your hand high so that I can see it for voting as well. Not the little blue hand, your actual hand. Our CEO will support me in identifying the order of speaking and to ensure fairness and equity for all. It'll be appreciated by all here and by those viewing from home that you speak clearly only when asked or required to do so, remembering that your comments and remarks may be heard when you are not officially debating. Please show appropriate etiquette and respect for each speaker. You know where the toilets are, and then of course in case of fire, council staff will lead us appropriately out of this building. Before we begin, I ask you to turn your mobile phones off or place them on silent. Please now stand for the opening acknowledgements. We acknowledge that the land that we meet on today is the traditional land of the Kaurna people, and that we respect their spiritual relationship with their country. We also acknowledge the Kaurna people as the custodians of the Adelaide region, and that their cultural and heritage beliefs are still important to the Kaurna people today. We also pay respect to the cultural authority of Aboriginal people visiting and attending from other areas of South Australia and Australia. On behalf of the City of Burnside, I gratefully acknowledge and pay respect to those who have sacrificed their lives for this country and its people. And we pray for understanding and guidance in our debate as we make decisions that will impact on the lives of all who reside, study, work in or visit the City of Burnside. Grant us wisdom as we serve our community. Thank you. Please be seated. Gallery, those who are at home, you should be able to follow all proceedings on the screen. So we begin with apologies, and I have two for this evening from Councillor Carbone and Councillor Pupil. Are there any conflicts of interest by elected members? In the absence of hands, yes.
Worship.
But she wants to make a slight change. So, Councillor Davies,
just a small change in the order, so that the answer of the question without notice that Councillor Piggott asked on Prescott Avenue and Alexandra Avenue trees be included in the minutes after his question. It's a bit out of order at the moment.
Through Madam Mayor, thank you for picking that up. It was our intent. However, the formatting worked against us, so we'll amend that. Thank you.
So I'll take it that you'll second it, Councillor Davis. All those in favour? Carried. Deputations. Now we have two deputations this evening. One from Isabel Redmond, and I believe that, Isabel, you are ready to go. You know, or I'm sure you are aware there's a 5-minute limit with a warning bell, I believe, Mr. Cooper. And hopefully if you'll hear that, Isabel. And then please stay online so that if there's anyone who wishes to ask you questions, that they can be asked immediately afterwards.
Thank you.
Thank you, Isabel. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the opportunity to present to you and to the council tonight. And we'd also like to thank all those members of the council who've not only attended to various phone calls and representations from us, but have taken time to listen to us in detail, to read the paperwork in detail, and to visit the Kensington Gardens Reserve and see what it is we're on about. Obviously, I'm very happy that all the councillors are very conscientious and have read those things in detail. So the things that I really wanted to cover in the few minutes available are, I guess, 4 main points. And the first and probably the most important is that of the cost of this proposal. And everyone is aware, of course, that the recommendation is that the council be prepared to agree in principle to agreeing to a proposal which at the moment we've had costed at $8 million. And so the recommendation is to agree to something which is 25% of the cost up to a maximum of 8 million, because the committee that's been dealing with this all this time has for the whole time been very concerned that this is a much higher figure than we actually think is going to be required. But it seemed to us that it would have been dishonest of us to put a lesser figure into this documentation, knowing that we had a quantity surveyor. But we are very keen to refine this project and get it to a much more acceptable cost. But the idea is that the council in any event will only be up for a maximum of 25% of that ultimate cost, up to a maximum of $2 million. We've been working on this for some time, but we think that it's going to take us another 18 months to 2 years to really get the plans to a final stage, especially taking on board the issues that have been raised by various councillors and staff members as we've gone about the process of getting this proposal before you tonight. We recognise, for instance, that it's very keen for the council to have an environmentally sustainable building, and we are very keen to adapt this proposal so that it meets any standards that the council wants to put on it, and that it also be state of the art and have increased vegetation and so on. We are really keen to work with the council to make sure that we do everything that the council wants in terms of the way this building looks. But ultimately, this is part of the Kensington Gardens Reserve Master Plan, and I'm sure that anyone who's been to see the facilities would recognise that the facilities as they are really inadequate in the modern era, given the numbers of women and children. And on Saturday mornings, we sometimes have hundreds of children going through the facilities, and we've got a really rapidly increasing number of women. The cricket club, for instance, has the highest percentage of women players of any of the states in Australia in terms of cricket and getting women involved. So we're expecting those numbers to increase, but the facilities, anyone who's seen them can see that they're simply not adequate for the women, for children, they're not family friendly, and they don't provide appropriate disability access, and particularly with our desire to engage more people in the community in using the facility, not just the sports aspect of it. We also, of course, are very conscious of the need for any such new facility to be available for the wider community benefit, and we are very much committed to that. The facility is usually at the moment used ultimately over the weekends. We recognise that no council today is going to be funding any building that's going to be used for less than the maximum amount of time, but basically on weekdays from early mornings through until the kids start coming to the various things that are run for them after school, the building is not utilised as much as it could, largely because the facilities simply aren't up to an appropriate standard. And we're very keen for the standards to be increased so that there will be a much broader use by the community, and particularly groups like Strength for Life, which we understand the council's running. It's growing at an exponential rate, and given the age profile of the area, I would think is likely to continue to grow. And so we believe that it's appropriate for council to agree to, in principle, funding of this. We know from talking to state and federal government that we can't get past first base with them. They both have indicated their happiness with the idea that we have this facility renewed, but both have said, both levels of government have said that they're not prepared to do it unless and until the council says that they are prepared to do it. And so what we're seeking tonight is simply for the council to give us in principle approval so that we can then go to those other levels of government. Now, we anticipate it's going to be 18 months to 2 years before we would get the final plans to the point where we'd actually be turning a sod on the redevelopment, because we've got to get through getting those plans so that they do meet all the council's requirements. And at the same time, we've got to go through community consultation. We've got to have...
I have to say that you've gone over the 5 minutes. So I think we'll have
I didn't hear any warning, so...
the bell did go at 4 minutes.
Sorry,
So,
didn't hear it.
Okay. Is there anything that you feel it's very important that you very quickly need to add, with the approval of the elected members, for her to make that a very brief additional statement.
I'm happy to move it.
Continues and
Yeah,
finishes
I'm happy.
speaking. Is there anyone who objects to it? Okay.
Look, there's only one other point. Are you there?
Yes, we'll let you go for another minute.
Thank you. There was only one other point that I wanted to cover, and that was that we do recognise also the need to evolve a better management structure. At the moment, the work that's been done on this has been done by a relatively informal but highly motivated committee, which is a subcommittee of the two clubs. We think that it will need a more formal structure involving someone from the council, whether that's an elected member or a staff person or both or whatever. We do think that there's a need to have a better formalised structure so that the council gets more oversight over the thing. But at the end of the day, the council will own a facility, and the proposal that we're putting up hopefully is something that the council would be proud of, but would achieve for only a contribution of 25% of the cost.
All right, thank you very much, Isabel. Now I'll open it to the members to ask any questions. Councillor Davis?
Yes, I'll ask a question. Isabel, thank you for coming and speaking. Like your midweek, how much would the usage be by the clubs? And I suppose how much time would be available for other community groups to use the facility?
Well, during the weekdays, generally it would be available all through the day until, as I said, we have youngsters coming after school for various things. So from after school time, whatever kids get there for cricket and football engagements after school with the junior teams on a number of weekdays, but generally all day from early morning through until after school, the building would be available. And then as I understand it, and I've got Gary Slack from the cricket, Peter McCusker from the cricket, and Greg English from the rugby here with me, who could answer more precisely. But my understanding is that each of the groups basically uses it 1 to 2 nights per week during the week for practice sessions. Was that correct, guys? Yes.
After 3:30 during cricket season, 3:30 to 6:30 on Mondays and Wednesdays and Fridays, the facility would be used and the grounds, and on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 5 till 9.
And Greg?
And with rugby, we train on Tuesday nights and Thursday nights, and Pembroke School trains on Monday nights and Wednesday nights.
So is that sufficiently clear as far as the use? It's largely during the week after school hours, it's already in use, but all during the week, during the daytime, it is unutilised at the present time.
Thank you. Councillor.
Well, good evening, Isabel. It's Councillor Henschke. Thank you very much. I'll go straight to my question. You said that the state and federal government were needing, in principle, agreement from council. So would it suffice then that the motion does that tonight, because percentages that we've got specified here could be negotiable, could be adjusted depending on the amounts of state and federal funding that could possibly come. Would that be acceptable?
I just want to be clear about what you're saying, Councillor Henschke. You're suggesting that there not be a percentage put into the motion. Is that, am I understanding that correctly?
Yes, that's right.
I think it's very unlikely that the council would be able to get away with less than 25%. And I do think that we need to have a reasonably clear amount, not necessarily a financial amount, but a figure like that to go to those other levels of government in order to say, look, council is committed to at least 25% of this, up to a maximum of. As I said earlier, we're very hopeful that we can pull the cost down to something much lower, in more the 5 to 6 million range. But I do think we probably need to have a percentage in the motion. If we can do better for you, we will, but it would be, I think, very difficult for us to negotiate with state and federal governments without having a commitment from council that it is committed to a certain percentage at least of what's going to be a building they own.
Councillor Dawes.
Isabel, it's Councillor Dawes here. Thank you for looking after us on Saturday. My question is a bit more than what Councillor Davis asked. As regards the club rooms itself, not necessarily the change rooms, would they be available for hire, say, Monday to Friday?
Absolutely. Yes, that's absolutely the intention. The group is actually very keen on getting more usage. And indeed, the staff would be aware that we wrote to the council about 12 months ago asking for contact details of any organisations that might be interested in utilising the facilities even as they are, and certainly to negotiate with anyone to start using the facilities now. The plan is that the club rooms, rather than being, as they are currently, two separate areas which are separately lockable and separately managed at the moment, we'd have one big area, and in the documentation and the proposal that was provided to you, you'll see that we recognise that a lot of private usage and hiring may not be wanting to have football or cricket paraphernalia around. There may be some who do, there's various people who might want that around for their particular thing, but we need to actually refine the design so that we can hide that stuff away and make the facility much more neutral in terms of its hireability for the average private use hirer. Does that answer your question, Councillor Dawes?
Yes, thank you, Isabel. Thank you.
Right, is there anyone else who wishes to ask a question? All right, there's no one else with their hand up, Isabel, so thank you very much on behalf of the council for coming and talking to us, or for talking from home, and for the other three of you who are standing by as well. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for the time.
Now, I believe we have a recording, Mr. Spearman, for Annette Richards, who is a representative of Straight for Life Group, and in her deputation relates to the new gym proposal, which is part of this facility development.
Ready to go?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Annette Richards and I'm the manager of Strength for Life and have been for about 13 years through COTA. I was around when that Burnside Direct Community Centre opened, and it was successful right from the start, and they're a very passionate group of people in there. I've had many phone calls from participants there who were a little bit concerned about what's happened to them. So it was good when Henry contacted me and was telling me about the plans in Kensington Reserve, had a look at it. It looks fantastic, and having the outside gym as well as having the inside gym as well. I think the benefits there are parking, because I know that in the community centre that's quite poor for parking, but I understand that quite a lot of people walk there, so I think that we have to take that into consideration as well. As I said, people are very passionate there about it, and I believe they run between 13 to 15 sessions a week. So it would be great if all of those sessions could remain. We did have a street light at on St Bernard's Road at ACH. But because that's a residential facility, that's actually had to close down. Now they had about 5 sessions a week, and those people are looking for somewhere else to go. So Kensington Gardens is actually good for them. Also, if you're looking for something to compare against, the City of Tirotiri Gully had their program going since 2008. They originally worked out of the Barracks Road Southall, and it was there for probably 5-6 years, and everyone was really happy with it. Then the council decided that they would move to Turramurra Recreation Centre because it would be a much bigger centre, and the processes there would enable them to have more control. People weren't happy. They don't like change. They've been doing this program for quite some time, and so there was resistance to the change. So what happened? About 95% of the people that were at the other place actually changed to Turramurra, and after a while, everybody liked it better. And they now have 41 sessions per week. So it's become very, very popular. And we know that Burnside is very popular, and even some of the under council people come over to that site. I think one of the reasons is that they feel comfortable there. It's their own place, which they sort of think that they own sort of things, so that may be a bit of an issue. But I can only say that I think that if we can have both of them, would be fantastic and would probably suit everybody. But the new place at Kensington Gardens Reserve looks really good and it would be well used by the whole community. Thanks very much.
Okay, now that was previously recorded, so obviously we can't ask questions, but I thank Jeanette in absentia for her contribution to tonight's meeting. We move to, there's no public question time. Questions on notice. We haven't received any this week. Any motions on notice? I haven't received anything. Questions without notice. Are there any questions without notice? We don't have any motions without notice. Reports of officers. I'll just run through them and ask you if you wish to withdraw any of them in particular. So first of all, the 14.1 Annual Environmental Sustainability Scorecard. Anyone wishes to withdraw that? Thank you, Councillor Davey. Chief Executive Officer, this is report. If that's not going to be withdrawn, then I'll seek a mover. Thank you, Councillor Cornish. Seconded, Councillor Henschke. All those in favour? Carried. The elections, well, both of those elections will need to take place. So is there anyone who wishes to move a motion? I thought when we get to that, we might have a discussion as to whether or not you want to go into informal session to discuss it, discuss either or both of them, and also whether or not you wish to, or somebody wants, is it interested in doing a secret ballot, particularly for the second one, which is the election of the local government association president.
I'll pull both of them.
You withdraw both of them, Councillor Lemon? Okay. All right, finance end of the month. Right, there's no one. Thank you, Councillor Cornish, seconded by Councillor Dawes. All those in favour? Carried. City Development and Safety Policy Review, Bushfire Hazard Management Policy. Anyone wish to withdraw that? So I'll let Councillor Hughes have it this time and Councillor Lemon seconded. All those in favour? Carried. The Draft Disability Access Inclusion Plan, Councillor Davey. And finally, the Kensington Gardens Reserve Club Rooms Rebuild, Councillor Piggott. Now, we can, if we move to number 15, you'll see on page 241 where we collectively bundle those all together so that we can actually move the whole lot at once. So is that that come up from you, Councillor Hughes, that you're happy to move in that way?
Yes.
Seconded by Councillor Lemon. I saw your hand up there. Just before I do, I just wanted to make a point of thanking Peter Mansoparis from the Brown Hill Creek for running last week the first session about the Brown Hill Creek, and there is a second one. If you missed out on that, there's a second one. I think it's tomorrow evening.
No, it's a week later.
Oh, sorry, another week.
Yes.
Wednesday next week.
They just put it forward.
Oh, they just moved it. Okay. So I recommend that to you if you're not familiar with it. Very, very good presentation. opportunity to answer questions. I know Councillor Piggott and Councillor Hitchcock both were involved last Monday when the first session ran. So if you're interested and don't know a lot about it, it's a great opportunity to learn more currently what's happening and also, of course, ask questions of project manager. All right, now I'll seek a vote on that. So all those in favour, collectively, all of those, thank you, carried. I thought we might just finish the rest as well. So Mayor's report, Councillor Hughes again, Councillor Davis seconded, all those in favour, carried. Reports of members delegates, just ask you to make sure that you submit those, anything you wish to add to Rob as soon as possible. And if we do number 18 as well, we just need someone to move, recommend to receive that report. Councillor Lemon, I think, and Councillor Turnbull seconded. All those in favour? Carried. So now we can go back to 14.1. Councillor Davey.
Your Worship.
Sorry?
I just might suggest that, given that we have people be interested in probably listening from home in relation to item 14.8, that we skip to that.
I will be guided by the direction from the rest of the council. Otherwise, I was going to consider that there may be a lengthy discussion about that. And I'd really like to get the other ones done first, particularly since we have staff present in relation to that. So I will be guided by the group though. If you wish me to move that one forward, I will. Otherwise, I would prefer to get through all of these. We've got a number of staff who are waiting as well. At least those at home can be comfortable and have a glass of wine if they want. Yes, Councillor Lemon.
May I suggest that we leave the
voting
until after?
Yes, we can do those. I'm happy to, if everyone else is in accordance with that, I'm very happy if we do the voting after. Okay, or at least after the first page anyway. So let's go through. See, it all depends on the timing. Councillor Davey.
Thanks, Your Worship. Yes, thank you. I'm happy to move in accordance with the officer's recommendations. And I'd like to thank Barry and his team, all of the staff who've done such a fantastic job in putting this together. It's a huge body of work, and the CEO, of course, I know he's had input as well. It's a huge body of work and much appreciated that we could see in a report what's happening and our focus on the environmental front. And there's lots to manage. My only question is relating to the curbside bin. It's to do with waste management. We have a big challenge, and it's to do with curbside bins and those trials. It's the matters on page 23 and 24. Particularly the targeted reduction of organics in the waste to landfill bins, and the 3-stage trial on non-recyclable materials.
Councillor Davey, we're having a great deal of difficulty hearing you. So I wonder if you could move your folder towards the centre so that you're actually talking more towards the microphone, because I think your voice is going towards Councillor Piggott. It's not being picked up by the microphone in front of you.
Okay.
So
I'm hearing it very well.
I'm sure. I'm sure we'll find Councillor Piggott, but up here, we with the poorer hearing are struggling.
My apologies for that. Yes, it's the initiatives, para 54, the initiatives that we weren't
Page
able to
number,
commit.
please. Page 23.
Page 23 and paragraph 54. So it was the two initiatives we weren't able to commence about utilising RFID technology in curbside bins, and that was a direct feedback trial targeting a reduction of organics in waste to landfill bins. And the second project was a 3-stage trial focused on non-recyclable materials in bins. And I just wondered when we're able to progress with those two trials, or if we've got a timeline for those things.
Through Madam Mayor, can I refer to Mr. Ken or Dr. Phil?
The trials are due to commence as soon as we possibly can. We're still waiting on East Waste to connect those bits of the technology to make those trials as cost efficient as possible, and also to allow us to monitor them very effectively so we know how effective those two different actions are, and which can guide future decision making on whether we should roll them out further. I've been assured by East Waste that those technologies will be connected within the next few months so that we can get moving on them.
Now, second from Councillor Cornish, and then it's Councillor.
Thank you, Worship Guest. Very happy to second this motion as it stands and commend the administration, Barry and Dr. Phil Roteman, for this incredible piece of work. To pull all this together into one document is just a masterpiece, absolute masterpiece. And I can't wait until our IT professionals get hold of it and make a lovely dashboard on our website so we can track the progress over the years. But I've just got to say that the amount of work and effort that's gone into here is just absolutely remarkable, and it cannot go unacknowledged. So I'd like to sincerely thank you guys for all of the work done. It's a great starting off point for this council in its battle to fight climate change. So thank you for that.
Councillor Lemon.
Yes, thank you. I echo those statements. The pulling together this information was a big job, and it's been done really, really well. I have one question and one comment. And my question is, on page 25, paragraph 58, council will review the curbside waste management policy with a focus on schools. And I'm interested on what that focus might be. What's the rationale with that? What's the outcome that we're looking at?
Thank you. Through the chair, had a couple of workshops with schools over the last couple of years discussing waste management, and there's two areas where I think changes might be beneficial. The first is with regard to our curbside collection of waste from schools, and the most cost efficient and most effective way to get those waste and resources from schools to where they need to go. And secondly, in terms of waste education and the way we support waste education in schools, and making sure again that that's effective and hits the mark so that it flows through to our curbside collections over time.
My apologies, but that's actually brought forward another question, and that is, do we collect rubbish from schools?
Through the chair, so the policy as it stands is that we allow schools the same as a residential property, so one set of bins per rateable property. One of the issues with that is that some schools are on one rateable property and others are on 3 and others are on 5 or 6. So it becomes quite inequitable across the school, the number of bins that we can provide according to the policy.
And of course, all state schools are rateable as well, I would say.
Yeah.
So there's a comment, but that's not the comment I wanted to make. The comment I wanted to make was something that really hit home. I went to the Wollonga Hub markets on Saturday morning, and there were green lidded bins at those markets. And I actually dropped some food waste in one of them. And I'm very particular about what bins. I like to think I'm really particular personally in my house. And it was full of coffee cups, disposable coffee cups. And then I read this report. And this report says that the minute you've got a disposable or half a dozen, and there would have been half a dozen in the bottom of the bin I looked at, and in fact, I had my leftover sausage in a bun, and that was the only organic waste that was in there. The rest of it was coffee cups. And then I read this report and I saw that actually just contaminates the bin straight away. So I think it's probably time that we had, possibly at all the cafes in our city, signs up saying, do not put these in green lidded bins, ever. That's my comment.
Through Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I'm just going to share a little experience. Some of the coffee companies are producing their compostable coffee cups that will enable them to be placed in that green bin. So just depends on the appropriate.
But people don't know what
No,
it is, because you go to the supermarket and you buy a biodegradable bag for your rubbish. It's not compostable.
I appreciate it.
And so if you're not thinking straight in terms of which is which.
I will share that I needed Dr. Phil to help me with my separation the other day. So it's not simple, I agree.
And until there's some sort of conformity and standardisation across the state, Even across the
But
country.
my point would be that education is
Oh, yeah.
just a sign where the coffee's, just a sign where people buy their coffee in the cups.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Councillor Davis? Sorry, no, I apologise. Councillor Henschke, you're on my list, and then Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Mayor. Today, I had a lovely encounter with a Burnside resident, and when she found out that I was a councillor, the first thing on her mind was, I've got to talk to you about waste. I want to be involved. I want to do something. And she was very passionate, and I encouraged her to contact the administration. There's a lot of great initiatives underway, and I'm reading on page 38, for example, we've promoted environmental sustainability through several articles we've published, we've run courses, we've partnered, we have Resilient East collaboration and so forth. This is all great. My question though is, are we heading in a direction of, I think it's called citizen science, a type of model like citizen science. Can that be applied to the waste industry, in that people really drive the change? People get their hands dirty, literally, in trying to do something about waste. I know people can do it at a household level themselves, and this is what we try to encourage households to do. But is there something more we can do in that model of citizen science? That's my question to Dr. Professor.
Dr. Phil.
Thank you for the chair. Good question. Citizen science is an area I've dabbled in the past. I would say yes, there are some opportunities there, but they are limited because of the fact that people will be limited to their own bins in terms of conducting some analysis of the contents. So it needs to be weighed up against other potential initiatives, but getting some volunteers in the waste space is something on the agenda that could be very useful. So
okay, I'll pass
that
the phone number over.
It would be lovely to have street monitors, wouldn't it?
Yes. Very long chaos.
Councillor Davis.
Yes, very quickly on page 16, I just wanted to remark upon the changes between the street light carbon emissions. Saving us some 650 tonnes every year. Like that's huge. Essentially, we've reduced our emissions. I suspect some of it's because of COVID to some extent. Was that right? No, it's the 1920 years. So none. Very limited amount, I suppose, because of that. But look, I'm looking forward to our new CEO delivering a 25% reduction every single year. Great. No, but well done. I think this report is excellent. And I think the benchmarking. It's when we first had this motion, I said, well, how are we actually going to make a change to climate change? I was very skeptical of it. And when I saw this report, I think it's the best report I've seen in the last 6 years of my entire term of council. And I think that benchmarking and the ability for us to track on so many different key areas is amazing. So I can't wait to see how this is going. And congratulations to the team, and especially to General Manager Kant.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? I'd just like to, it would be remiss of me not to recognise the amount of effort that has gone into this particular report. That is from the General Manager through to the obvious leadership that's come through Dr. Phil. I hate calling you Dr. Phil because it reminds me of that television show.
Yeah.
But without the expertise that we have within our staff, we would not be able to produce this kind of work. And I really, really commend this, and I'm looking forward to interviewing you on my Burnside highlights tomorrow morning. Okay, so thank you very much. Those in favour? Oh, sorry, I need to double check. Do you wish to speak against Councillor Davies?
I endorse all of the comments that are made, and I'm very proud too that this is our new document that we can use as a great tool. So
don't worry, wait till I flap it around in front of other era councils.
Yes.
All right, those in favour? Those against? Carried. Right, the next one is the, I'm just moving down the page, it's right down to 14.7, isn't it? We're going to leave the vote until later. So 14.7, Councillor Davey.
Thank you, Worship. I've got an amended, slightly amended motion to this. It's just an addition to what's already here. I'll read that out for everybody. It's that Council 1 adopt the final Disability Access and Inclusion Plan 2020 to 2024 with the following addition. At priority 2, leadership and collaboration, include an addition to 2.3, promote participation in council meetings and decision-making processes to become action 2.3.3, ensure City of Burnside community engagement, public consultation policy is utilised for changes to existing heritage facilities, parks and reserves, etc. The expected outcome is that community knowledge is utilised and awareness of disability is increased. I'm not sure how we want to move.
Can I just ask the CEO's suggestion here as how we might do this?
Through Madam Mayor, I'm just having a thought that potentially we could treat it as a two-part and deal with the plan and your amendments, and then we could undertake the process of appointing, or if council are comfortable, we could seek the names and then do it all as one.
Probably 2 parts might be the best.
But 2 parts certainly.
Make it easier to manage, I think.
Yes, yes. So, just to clarify what, just to clarify my intention, I'll just walk you through that. It's the leadership and collaboration section, which is page 12 of the papers, or page 191. And the motion is that at leadership and collaboration, the objective at 2.3, which is promote participation in council meetings and decision-making processes. And then there's 2 actions there already. The third action would become a 2.3.3, which is to ensure that City of Burnside community engagement policy is utilised for changes to existing facilities and heritage facilities, parks and reserves. And then the expected outcome is that community knowledge is utilised and awareness of disability is increased. So just in speaking to that, hopefully I haven't had my time to start now. In accordance with the state government requirements, the administration has developed this plan, which will be adopted under the SA Disability and Inclusion Act of 2018, and which is designed to recognise that a stronger commitment to access and inclusion planning for people living with a disability was needed. The Act supports the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. Staff have invested a huge amount of work to move this plan to this stage. The one small area raised with me regarding the plan relates to the final plan, relates to the involvement of the Burnside community when changes proposed as necessary are to be made. So the plan establishes an advisory group, a fabulous move and an excellent initiative, which will operate in a strategic capacity. As has been pointed out to me, there are often specific situations where there may be changes or upgrades proposed as necessary for access to our facilities. And where there are one, more or several viable options to make the changes to provide the disabled access. This is particularly the case with existing structures, which in due course may be upgraded. And I believe there is a case for our community to be involved and consulted when changes are proposed for these facilities, as well as for changes in our iconic and heritage parks, reserves and other attractions. So this proposed addition allows for this community involvement to be harnessed along with the benefit of local knowledge, and will improve awareness of disability in the community in that whole consultation process. So hopefully you'll support this, and we can just add that small inclusion. We really need to have community consultation as part of this in terms of the viable options and alternatives. Thanks very much.
Can I have a seconder, please?
Second.
Councillor Turnbull?
I don't wish to speak.
I wish to speak, but you're happy to second it? Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Councillor Corner?
Just a question, if I may, of the administration. Obviously, we know consultation actually costs quite a bit of money. How many facilities would we have to now go out to community consultation with on an annual basis in our regular annual upgrades for them, and how much would it sort of this policy shift change and cost the city every year? Would you be able to estimate that at all?
Through Madam Mayor, the short answer is slightly unknown, but using the parameters within our engagement and consultation policy, I wouldn't envisage that all facilities would require high levels of engagement. It'll be on the spectrum. Some will be informing and some will be full-blown engagement. So unfortunately, I can't estimate it, but needless to say, every matter wouldn't require full-blown consultation. And an example I'll use would be, for example, the installation of a crossover to prams or ramps on a curb and gutter. I'll be honest, I'm not going to go to consultation on something like that. But a larger issue would certainly engage with that policy. And
A ramp at a scout hall or something like that? Would we consult on that?
we would inform.
Okay.
So on the spectrum of our consultation policy,
Yep.
we use that spectrum of engagement.
Thank you.
Councillor Lemon?
Yes, I also would want to pass, we will, of course, consult with peak bodies and disabled groups about anything that we're planning. Would we not seek this covers that we would always seek their view on whatever it is we're choosing to do to ensure that it does meet the needs of those people that know disability best. Yes?
Through Madam Mayor.
You nodded.
Yes.
You can't nod for the microphone.
I wasn't quite sure if it was a rhetorical question.
No, it wasn't.
The short answer is absolutely will be guided by those big bodies that are the experts in this.
In every case, when we're actually upgrading things or renewing them or doing them new, there'd be peak bodies that we'd be going to.
Well, again, I've got to be honest. If we've identified that we need a ramp to gain access to a park, for example, I'm probably not going to engage with a peak body every time on that because it's obvious.
So the ramp would actually be for people that have got difficulty in accessing a door that perhaps has steps, yes? Would the ramp then have those bizzos on it so that people that are vision impaired will know that they're not going to fall off the edge of it?
So,
If we're going to go down this path, we need to be thorough about who we're including.
Yeah, no, so through Madam Mayor, in all of our actions, we'd have regard for the Building Code of Australia and all the standards that are prescribed, because they are given and we have to comply with those if we take an action in this area, absolutely. So there are other prescribed standards that we need to, for sure.
Thank you.
Okay, I don't have anyone. Oh, Councillor Hughes.
I'm going to speak, and I have a concern with this amendment, and I guess the reason I have a concern is because a lot of people who have disabilities are the minority in our community. So by us going out and saying we're going to go and consult the community, what we're going to get typically is a majority view of those changes. And I am not certain in my mind that that's the best thing to do when we're trying to adopt a disability and inclusion plan. And I understand the context behind this amendment, but what I do have a concern about is that that consultation policy is typically about getting a majority view on something. And disability and inclusion is typically an issue for a minority group. So if we go out and we consult on something and try and make a change to to include a minority group, we're just going to hear the majority group based on our consultation. So that to me is something that doesn't sit comfortable with me at the moment. So I'll wait and see what everyone else thinks about this, but I think we need to perhaps put a little bit more thought and rigour into that, similar to what Councillor Cornish has raised about would we consult on everything? And I think really we, as a council, we need to adopt a plan and then have faith that the staff will implement that to try and create an environment that we can all enjoy as members of the community, not just a majority through our community consultation. And that's my concern.
Councillor Davis.
Yeah, I can definitely see where Councillor Hughes is coming from, and I also understand, I think, where Councillor Davies is coming from. And I think that there's actually consultation, I suppose, can be used in a really constructive way for our community. And I kind of see two different ways of applying the plan. So the easiest way for my non-trained mind to think about it is perhaps like, say, a new access, say in Penfold Park or something like that. So a new, better access of walking trails through there. Now, to my mind, those big facilities where we actually have a plan, then going about it, and we should be planning ahead for disability access to go through, then we're going to go through that full consultation when we actually put through the master plan. But say if it's like new infrastructure, then I think that by going out to consultation in many ways, especially where people might actually be shocked about it or not understand the proposal, is to inform them in a way, and often I find that residents love to have their say and do that in a constructive manner. Whereas if it's kind of coming through, say if there is a proposed change that some people become aware of, then it can take its own life, its own form. Or if there's a proper process for considering those concerns and then dealing with that as a whole and addressing all those concerns, that consultation serves as an informing mechanism as well, but also an ability to collate some of the problems, I suppose, and steer that. So to my mind, and I agree, and that's how I thought of the motion when the CEO responded, was that this is not going to be for everything, and that we're going to be consulting as per that consultation policy that's already existed. So to my mind, my understanding of this is this shouldn't have a huge change to the actual policy as it sits, because our consultation policy would always sit there. It's not requiring us to go out every single time, but we're going to be drawing on that consultation policy and ensure that that's recognised within our plan, I suppose. So to my mind, I'm kind of of both ways. I think that this can help alleviate that majority or a large number of group fear as well, but also incorporate a much wider group than just those who are the squeaky wheel, perhaps. So there might be a whole bunch of people who are in support of it, but who haven't gotten their opportunity to speak in favour of this either. And this I think will cater to a larger group. So that's why I'm in support of it. I can see what's trying to be achieved here.
I'm just going to suggest to the mover of the motion that you inserted the words "as necessary" after utilised, so it is utilised as necessary for changes. Whether that would resolve Councillor Hughes' concerns and that Councillor Davis also resolve. I'm thinking of a situation, the City Council just are designing a playground specifically for disabilities, young people with disabilities. Now that obviously would need to go to consultation with specific groups within our community to find out what the needs are for those children with disabilities that exist in our community. However, if we were looking at just putting a piece of equipment into a park that had some disability enablement, then it would not need to go out to full consultation.
I'd be happy.
Would you be happy with those two words included? And who was the seconder? Councillor Cornish? No, sorry.
Councillor Turnbull.
Councillor Turnbull. Would you be happy with it as necessary added in?
I don't think I am really, because as necessary, who deems what's necessary? Who are the decision makers on this?
Through me, if I give a bit of guidance around that thought, I'm interpreting that as necessary for means if there's other acts that come into play that we have to comply with, that we have no choice but to comply with,
safety
that
standards
would override. For example, the Development Act, Disability Discrimination Act, Public Health Act, if those acts are mandating certain things, we really have no choice. And it would be remiss of us to consult on matters that are prescribed in those acts. So that, for me, helps clarify around when necessary. That's one point.
Yeah.
Right, thank you.
That was my thinking as well when I made the suggestion. So would you be happy with that? Okay. So we'll just add those 2 words and thanks, Rob. Now I think I had Councillor Hughes. You just want to ask a question? And then it's Councillor Henschke.
which stems from a comment that Councillor Davis made. So if something was already in a master plan, would that then go back out and be consulted on? Or a conservation management plan?
We're doing it tonight.
Through Madam Mayor, it depends on the level of detail that it's enunciated in the plan. Some of our plans are quite detailed and when council adopted them, and other plans do not have quite as low a level of detail that may require some of those consultation. So it will depend on the plan, right?
Councillor Henschke.
Thank you, Mayor. I heard the Chief Executive refer to the Development Act a moment ago, and that brings me to my question that whether this, I'm sure it does, this plan, but I just wanted to check that this plan will require us to engage with developers, for example, to increase their awareness of what they're meant to do to ensure people with disability can buy housing in the city of Burnside to suit their needs. Social, housing, access. Yeah, I just wanted to talk about these future needs of our people.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to fill that to Jim community.
Thank you, Councillor Henschke, through the Mayor. There are a couple of actions in the plan that talk about partnerships and looking at, I guess, possibilities and options ranging from a vast of things such as employment, work experience, but really touching base and generating those strong relationships with all disability and mobility support organisations that will help provide us with guidance on where we could either advocate or promote.
Okay, I don't have anyone else on here, so unless there's anyone else who wishes to speak, I'd like to go back to Councillor David to sum up.
Thanks, Your Worship, and thanks everyone for your input. Yes, certainly, as the plan articulates, it is key that we liaise with advocacy and disability groups to encourage participation and to work with them. That's outlined in 2.4 of the leadership and collaboration section. But this inclusion that I've made is just to reinforce community involvement at the local level and local and more wider level. And it's of course complementary to all this other engagement and advocacy that's done with disability groups. We certainly have legislative compliance in all areas across our work, from work health and safety to public liability to development and disabilities and all sorts of things. But and we consult on a whole lot of matters that arise under that legislation. So as Councillor Turnbull articulated well, it's who decides what's necessary to be changed. And if there are, in a disability sense, options and variations and several avenues that can be explored, that is, as I see, when we will go out to community consultation and inform and advise and educate our community and seek their feedback. So I see disability and inclusion for all in our community as paramount. Going out to consultation on some issues is important, and it's by exception. Some of our management and master plans are quite old, so changes to some of our recreational and reserve areas might have been mooted many years ago, but if upgrades are necessary, they should really go out to community consultation, and their involvement is critical. So I hope you'll support this. It's just a minor reinforcement of how important our community is and how important it is for them to have their say.
All right, put it to the vote. Please raise your hand. Those who support it. Those against. Carried. Right, now the second part requires some nominations. Who would like to nominate someone else or nominate themselves to be on the Disability Access and Inclusion Advisory Group? Councillor Davis.
I'll nominate Councillor Davey.
Councillor Davey, do you accept the nomination? Councillor Davey? Councillor Piggott?
Oh, actually, I was going to.
You've got the same person? Okay, so anyone else? Councillor Dawes?
I'd nominate Councillor
Turnbull, do you accept that nomination, Councillor Turnbull? Councillor Cornish?
I'd like to nominate Councillor Hughes.
And you would accept it too, Councillor Hughes?
Yeah.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to nominate? All right, there are 3, so there will be a secret ballot.
Do we have 3?
Sorry?
I was just going to suggest, Madam Mayor, that if there are 3, I suggest we post a quick one.
Just make the, okay, I'm fine with it. Or do you want to make it 2 and there's a reserve? Just do 3, okay. Does that mean with the approval of everybody else?
Yeah.
Around the table?
I'll move that way.
All right, so we're making it 3 people, and so therefore that just gets changed to add a 3rd name. So we have Councillor Davey, Councillor Turnbull, and Councillor Hughes.
I'm happy to move that way.
There may be times when somebody can't come, so it's really good to be able to make sure that we've at least got 2 and hopefully 3 at those meetings. So Councillor Davis has moved. We need a seconder. Councillor Dawes seconded. All those in favour? Carried. Okay. Right, now we move to Kensington Gardens, number 14.8. And that was Councillor Piggott.
Lady Mayor, I have proposed a slightly different motion from the officer's recommendation. Do you wish me to read it?
All right, Councillor Piggott.
I was just hoping to read it, although my Zoom, which is messing me about tonight, is just,
Yeah, I think it's a good
that's
idea to read
everybody.
it.
There we
I won't
go.
start
Thank you.
counting your time until we finish.
That would be nice. Thank you. And before I start, could I just take a tweak, a final tweak, and in 3.3, could I just change the word from manage to reduce? And some confusion has been identified. So.
And Councillor Piggott, I need to get you to speak up a little louder too.
Oh, okay. Yeah, happy to.
Thank you.
The motion actually is not dissimilar to the officer's recommendation, but it does do a few extra things, perhaps. And it says that council fully supports the proposal to secure government funding for the replacement of the current club rooms at Kensington Gardens Reserve, noting proposed replacement buildings similar footprint to the current building, and it's focused to build community use of the facility beyond the needs of the incumbent clubs. 2, agrees in principle to contribute 25% of the overall project cost of club rooms rebuild to a maximum of $2 million. 3, agrees that its support is subject to 3.1, the club securing or contributing the remaining funding of the overall project cost. 3.2, council being provided the opportunity to be involved in the final design. 3.3, the clubs making all endeavours to 1, maximise the environmental sustainability of the design and comply with council's strategic plan. 2, reduce the overall cost of the build. And 3, minimise, as far as possible, the visual impact of the design on the reserve. 3.4, final approval of the design and budget allocation by council. 3.5, the ongoing leases of the new building for club use. Be specific to club needs, and the council assumes responsibility for maximising community use. 6, all necessary community consultation and requirements under the Development Act 1993, the relevant annual business plan and budget process and long-term financial plan. And 7, administration providing administration of capital A, if we could, ongoing updates on the progress of the project through the CEO's report.
Last one, capital A, administration.
And if I could speak to that, like I say, the motion actually is actually very similar, but perhaps sort of strengthened in a number of ways from the officer's recommendation. And in speaking to it, what we have here, we as a council own the 2 sets of club rooms for cricket and rugby. We have agreed over the years to provide these facilities in order to assist the rugby and the cricket club in what they do within the community and their clubs. And we have been presented to as a rare opportunity, I think. The nation and the state are seeking projects, capital projects, that they are seeking to fund in order to address the issues that the pandemic has done to our economy. And we have 2 sporting clubs that are highly engaged in seeking to source funding in what is hopefully a supportive political environment. The buildings themselves are not in great shape. They are considered low in terms of condition. You can read in the report. Condition, utilisation, community benefit and stakeholder interest. We have all been there in recent times. They act in a single purpose, but they're not currently fit for that purpose. Both clubs now have an expansion of women's games, which is causing challenges in regard to change rooms. They are also both experiencing growth in juniors, which they now cannot accommodate totally with their current facilities. The disability access within the buildings is not appropriate and compliant. And I think it's fair to say that both facilities really do not lend themselves to wider community use. I don't think there is any question that in the not too distant future, if not tonight, then this council will be in need to spend an amount not largely different from the current amount here tonight to actually sort those club rooms out. They will need money spent on them in the near future. So what we have here actually is an opportunity. The proposal is we're being asked to really set the process going. The clubs have been pretty active already in seeking whether there is possible funding in state and federal government. But both those rely on the owner of the asset being supportive and putting their shoulder to the wheel in regard to the same project, and that's us, the City of Burnside. What we're being asked tonight is to provide an in-principle support to both that we'd be happy if the project went forward, and second, that we would be happy to provide up to 25% of its cost. What that would do, if these clubs are successful in raising the remainder of the money, would provide the City of Burnside with an outstanding asset that then would be fit for purpose, long life expectancy, and obviously compared to the current surroundings would provide a significant opportunity for community use. It would accommodate the needs of both clubs, something that we are keen to do. I don't think that's arguable. We're keen that the cricket and rugby continue to be successful and well-respected clubs in the country. And to do that, they need better facilities. But we also here get a significant amount of community use out of a City of Burnside asset. So what we're seeking to be, what we're asking for support here tonight is to actually provide the base funding. There's been a question mark about the amount of money, and the motion addresses that in that we heard in the deputation that they will perhaps spend less. But I think at the moment what we should do is we've got an original estimate. We should put our weight behind it and set those clubs loose to do a couple of things. One is look at the best value for money building they can provide and source the funding, the remaining funding from somewhere else. And we'll end up with an outstanding asset for fitting in the city of Burnside. So I seek your support for this motion.
Have a second, please. Councillor Cornish.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, I'm very happy to second this motion. I completely agree with Councillor Piggott's analysis that it's pretty opportune timing to grab some rather large cash, and I completely agree that one party has to actually step out and make a commitment or make an in-principle support to get the others around the table. So I think this is a very smart move. Otherwise, it will cost us a lot of money further down the track, and I think the timing is just right. It doesn't mean that it's going to be the end day. It doesn't mean it's an $8 million facility at the moment. It doesn't mean we're committed to $2 million. It is an in-principle support. It is the initial stone being kicked down the road for this to get all the funders around the table, and it's the appropriate way to do it. So I'm more than happy to support this motion. I like the report. The design was really, really well thought out. I have to admit, I see a lot of these sort of designs, and I was very impressed. Certainly the 6 change rooms, that accommodates greatly for the juniors, and the transfers overs and the changeovers during games, and especially when you've got the 3 ovals there too, playing at all different times. So I think this is an important thing for us to do, and it wouldn't be opportune if council actually didn't go ahead and do this at this point in time. It would actually shoot ourselves in the foot if we didn't do this right now. So I'm very supportive of this, and I hope the council does too. Thank you.
Looking around the room for anyone else who wishes to speak. Councillor Turnbull.
Oh, thank you.
I think there's somebody's hand up here. Councillor David.
I've thought long about this report, its recommendations, and I support it in general. However, I hold some reservations, it's mainly to do with the $8 million. Like other elected members, I've undertaken a tour of the current facilities and fully appreciate how awfully outdated and inadequate they are. This is particularly so with respect to the change room facilities, which are constructed in a past era that did not allow for the current requirements with respect to the rates of women participating in juniors. Inadequate. Likewise, the kitchen facilities are a relic of past times, actually occupational health and safety. So I agree with the recommendation included in the report in the way that for a new purpose-built facility and not to upgrade the existing one. However, I hold reservations. We are asked to commit $2 million at very short notice with very little time to discuss and consider, and this concerns me. The $8 million quoted, only one quote from one architect, seems excessive for a facility that would service just 2 of the current sporting clubs that use Kensington Gardens Reserve. It presents as a Rolls-Royce option. This point's even acknowledged by the applicant clubs themselves, and they seem quite surprised at the proposed cost and suggest that they would be happy to settle for a more modest solution. There are quoted examples of other similar local government facilities that have been successfully implemented at far less cost. In this light, I'd be happy to consider an amendment to the motion that capped the total value at perhaps $5 million and not $8 million. And this would reduce the maximum Councillor Burnside commitment from $2 million to $1.25 million. I think this expenditure would be more in line with the costs of other similar community developments, including those in the report on page 212, and as indicated by both the presence of the cricket and rugby clubs. I hold some concerns with respect to how the council manages the issue of equity in providing funding to our various community and sporting groups. And while I agree that the upgrade of this facility is long overdue, we don't seem to have a policy on how to treat our community groups equitably. Perhaps I'm mistaken here. But I did have a list of how much has been spent on other sporting clubs in the last 3 years, and honestly, it's not anywhere near that amount of money just for 2 clubs. So the lawn bowls, the tennis club's not included. The ETKG Tennis Club, I assume they'll be eligible for council money during the revamp. Don't know about that one. But would accept this proposal set a precedent for similar approaches from the other users of the reserve. Also note that the hub precinct model is still in that report on page 209. Does this mean that the hub precinct model is going to be reinvestigated, even though the community was dead set against it last time? So in summary, I'm aware of the need to upgrade these deficient facilities, but I'm concerned about the proposed cost, which seems excessive, and I'm also concerned about the restricted inclusivity with regard to the various users of the Kensington Gardens Reserve. Yep.
Next on the list is Councillor Davey.
Thank you, Worship. Yes, I'm happy to support this proposal. I mean, it's an unexpected opportunity, and these clubs have talked to us for a long time about an upgrade and how this can be facilitated. So for such loyal, long-standing members of the community who need upgraded facilities, I'm happy to support this and to see that it progresses. My concerns relate to the initial plan was a bit shocking to me, and I was a bit concerned that there wasn't enough emphasis on the environment, and I want to see that this building is located on the same footprint as the current building. I want to see an environmentally state-of-the-art, green, carbon-neutral building. I think it's a great opportunity to have such a building in this beautiful location with reduced impact on the environment and complementing the whole scenario, which Kensington Gardens Reserve is becoming with the wetlands and all the other environmental work that's being designed and undertaken there. So hopefully an architect will be briefed who is capable of and has the leadership and direction to design such a building and provide the facilities that we ask for, will be utilised to develop the plans for us. So that's my main concern. We take advantage of the funding opportunities, hopefully without impacting our budget this year too much, and that we make it an environmentally state-of-the-art building that everybody can be proud of.
Again, going with 3D. The next D is Councillor Davis, followed by the third D, Councillor Dawes, and then Councillor Hitchcock.
I just had a question in terms of the community use and what the administration's thoughts were of whether they'd be able to fill it or whether there's demand in the community for that facility outside of those times.
Sure, Mr. Kent. Or
Yeah, I can answer that one through your mayor.
Can I just suggest that you bring your chair to the table in the middle? That'll save you shouting, and also then you'll be able to go. Oh, got it. You don't want to be a Rose? No, I was staying back.
That's much better.
Through the mayor.
That's not me.
That's what happens when they come here.
That's all.
Okay, can you hear me?
No.
Can you hear me now?
Is it on?
No, I didn't. It's on.
Just bring your chair to the middle, as long as you don't mind sitting between the lemon and the Davis.
Through the mayor, look, certainly is, particularly I think Annette Richardson, her point around Strength for Life, and I think there was a fantastic example with Tea Tree Gully with their moving their program, now running over 40 Strength for Life classes a week. And we've certainly got the potential and the interest from our community to run that. There's other programs, certainly I'm interested in looking at, is one particularly called the MEND program, which is regarding mental health, exercise and nutrition daily, where you actually combine physical exercise in a gym and then you go away and you cook a meal.
So having the kitchen and a gym right next to each other would allow me to run that program. I think the men's shed also provides a fantastic demonstration of you build a purpose-built facility for programs, it fills out. So look at the men's shed, which is actually the shed, and is now at full capacity during the week with men's sheds, women's sheds, and community sheds programs. So there's certainly capacity and interest in the community to fill this space.
Do you have a subsequent question, or do you wish to speak?
Like to ask another question.
Go ahead.
In terms of the cost, what's the administration's view on the cost of proposal 8 million, I suppose, and why did the officer recommend that higher limit, I suppose, of 2 million?
Through Madam Mayor, I might hand it to Mr. Cant to give us insight.
Through you, Mayor. I agree with all of the sentiments and the discussions that's been said thus far, including the deputy earlier on, that the cost estimated at this stage seems to be at a high level, and we are reasonably confident that we will be able to work with the clubs to reduce those costs required from both federal, state, and also contribution to council should we proceed. It's not, I should clarify a comment that was made earlier on, it's not a quote from an architect. The clubs engaged their own architect to come up with an architectural design to enable council to consider, and also to provide something to provide to the state and federal governments. Due process involved getting a professional cost estimator to cost those designs, and that's where the figure of 8 million came from. But I should also say that's inclusive of all professional fees, architectural fees, contingency, and project costs.
If I can just provide some further insight, I think to answer your question more fully. We had regard for what we felt was an ideal policy position that council might take into the future. And so we considered the treatment that council took the Lunga Tennis Club, where effectively there was a 25% council contribution given towards the cost of that project. And then we cast our mind forward to some other community facilities that we think may present themselves in the future. And whilst council hasn't been presented with the policy position at this point in time, it's going to come before you shortly. We are looking to recommend to council that council take a 25% funding position to provide a framework for clubs when they approach council in the future.
So do you wish to speak? No. Okay. So Councillor Dawes, you're next.
Thank you, Mayor. I have got an amendment which will come up on the screen shortly. I'll read the amendment first.
Sorry. Is it an amendment or distinctly alternate motion?
It's a motion, is it? Okay.
Sorry, I'm bring it up. Yeah, okay.
Just bring it up.
Bring it up.
Okay. Perhaps I can start that. If this motion does not get through, I foreshadow this motion, and I'll read it out to you. That to defer consideration of the report, Kingsman Garden Reserve Club Rooms Rebuild proposal until the first ordinary meeting in October 2020, thereby presenting the report to the same meeting as the Old Collegians Rugby Club funding request regarding their club refurbishments and extension for dedicated female change room facilities at Tregenza Oval.
A little louder, Councillor Dawes. A little louder, please. A little louder.
Okay. Acknowledge that council officers are developing a new council contributions to community facilities policy for the purposes of outlining under which conditions council will consider funding upgrades to community facilities, to whom, when, how much and how these requests will be assessed, allowing for equitable treatment and consistency across the city and a uniformed approach. So if I could speak now, not to that, but to the motion. Is that correct?
Yes.
I've got it right.
You can
now.
speak to the motion.
Okay, I guess the major concern I've always had is the actual cost. And I think Isabel told us, I think she was concerned, she was very hopeful that could come down. I think we're looking for a functional facility, not a gilt-edged facility here. And I think a more modest solution that Councillor Turnbull was suggesting. I'm also very much aware that the Old Collegians Rugby Club are putting forward a proposal, and I believe that will be at our next council meeting. So it makes sense to me that we consider those two at the same time rather than one before the other. I'm just a bit worried that one may affect the other. I do very much support Councillor Pickett's view about the future management of the facility. I think he's on the right track there, especially if we're going to spend a fair bit of money there. I support in principle the motion. What I don't support is actually the timing that we're going through at the moment and the amount that we're going to contribute. The $2 million to me is just far, far too much. I'm sure most of the rugby and cricket club would agree with me. So let's get it right. So I will be interested to see how we vote on this. If the motion is not passed, then I will foreshadow that particular motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Henschke, you're next. Then it's Councillor Davey with a question.
Oh, thank you, Your Worship. Yes, my question comes back to the design and architectural side of it. I just want to clarify that, because I'm so keen on the environmental aspects, that it's not unreasonable that we would get, is it us who would choose the architect and to do that, work up the design and that sort of concept for this?
Through Madam Mayor, my expectation would be that the club actually goes through this work with the view to revise the plan. Otherwise, council could bear considerable cost in reworking those designs.
Next is Councillor Lemon.
Thank you. I'm very happy to support this motion. I think that it is an opportune time. There is money about for shovel-ready projects. And whilst this isn't shovel-ready, I think we need to take advantage of the fact that there's going to be some rebuilding of Australia in the near future. And this is a great community project. And the reason I really like it is I draw upon my experiences at Bunanga Hub, where we had 5 sporting codes living out of transportables as their change rooms, as their showers, and as their storage rooms. 5 sporting codes. And that Bunanga Hub was opened about 6 years ago. And at the end of the day, and I'm sure I'll be corrected if I'm wrong, what we paid for that, and what was there beforehand were awful buildings that had been done in the 70s, not dissimilar to this, that were inaccessible to the community and were not fit for purpose any longer. What we paid for Bunanga Hub was around $5 million, or between 5 and 6, 5.2, something like that. But that was 6 years ago. What we're looking at now, and I actually 6 years ago had a conversation with Councillor Piggott saying, This is the sort of thing you need at Kensington Gardens. So we actually went through the process of going through the community consultation looking for a hub. Community didn't want it. The sporting club, actually, I don't know whether the community wanted it or not. The sporting clubs didn't want it. But now we've got an ideal situation where 2 of the sporting clubs have said we want a hub. And that actually meets our hub policy. And it also meets our hub policy in terms of providing services to the community. So what we've got in this is something not unlike Wollonga Hub, where we've still got our 5 sporting codes or possibly 6 running out of that now. But you've also got Strength for Life that would be happy to take that over, and I can imagine that that would become huge in that area. But also community clubs that would be doing other things. Wollonga Hub was almost oversubscribed within months of opening. And in fact, you'd be hard pressed to get any spare time in that place now. So I disagree that we should go for a modest solution, because I think if we start penny pinching, we can then say we're being, what's the old saying? Penny wise and pound foolish. What we need to do is build something that is purpose built, that is fit for purpose today. And it'll be fit for purpose for the next 15 to 20 years. Not something cheap, because we're not willing to put our hands deeper in our pockets. We're doing this for the community, with the community's money. And we're sitting here in this room to make those decisions. We're not actually taking a jar out of the kitchen cupboard with $5 for the lawn right now. These are the sorts of things that we're doing. The cost will be what it will be, but we won't be paying it this financial year and possibly not even next financial year. Isabel Redmond said they're actually going to be 18 months to 2 years before they're even getting close to breaking ground. So this is what we're doing tonight, is giving in principle support to them going forward and securing state and federal funding. And I have a lot of faith that that particular group of people will do very well in securing that. You've got some heavy hitters that know who to talk to, that have doors opening for them. So for us not to support them in their quest to get 75% of this funding would be very short-sighted and unnecessary, in my opinion. I wholly support this motion as it currently stands. In terms of getting the design right for the area that it's in, it will fall within the Kensington Gardens master plan. So it will actually fall within, I would think, our climate strategy, mitigation processes, our water sensitive urban design processes. These are all things that are actually going to come later. What we're looking at here now is helping these clubs take the people that really know how to make a good pitch to go to state and federal government and get the rest of the money. And that's our job. That's our job, to help the community, whether that community actually is part of a cricket club, a rugby club, or a Strength for Life club. This is why we're here. And I really am glad to be supporting this, even though it's come out of left field. And do you know what? Next week, when we look at Tregenza Oval, I'll be supporting that potentially too, because we can actually do 2 things a fortnight apart without having to wait 6 months for a cup of tea and a lie down. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Lemon. Councillor Davis, do you have another question or do you wish to speak?
I'll speak now. Thank you, Councillor Lemon. These facilities, the clubs first moved in there in 1964, and that actually makes the facilities 56 years old. I think when we look at the hub policy, we've actually got it in front of us today. It's important to understand that a hub policy doesn't mean every single sporting club must be in the same facility. That's not what a hub policy is about. And what we actually went through this process, and this process I think needs to be put in context. And the brilliance of what we're doing here, and I think this is potentially a model of how we should do things going forward rather than how we've done it in the past in the City of Burnside. We went through this process. We started this 6 years ago when I first started on this council. We started this master planning process and we went through a number of iterations and we looked at whether we could combine all 5 of those clubs in one facility. This wouldn't work. The difference between Wollonga Hub and here is they've got 2 playing ovals, and here you have hard court, grass, you've got rugby and cricket, and all different pitches, and putting them into one facility didn't really work. But it was always a contemplation of this master plan that a community hub would go into this precinct. And as those discussions progressed, the cricket and rugby club was always identified as being the next club to come up. And it was always discussed with the other clubs that this was the next priority, and that the other clubs could that was well into the future. Not 1 year, not 2 years, but well into the future, potentially, 7 or even 10 before we start to really contemplate any kind of major upgrade there. Now, what the Kensington Gardens Ward misses, and that region of the city of Burnside, is it misses a community facility like this, which can cater top-notch with that disability access to have more community groups utilise it. And I think that the opportunities for Strength for Life, and I don't want for a second to think that the idea would be to take Strength for Life groups out of Dulwich, or that it has anything to do with that. But this, in my own view, will stand up hugely. If you look at the facilities that would be offered, essentially by this plan already, you're looking at a 70 square metre dedicated gym, 250 square metres worth of exercise space, and the clubs have already committed and ensured that that facility would be debadged. So you wouldn't go in there thinking that you're in a rugby or cricket club. You would be going in there thinking that it's your club and it's your space as well, and it's a community space. And that's the big emphasis now. So to my mind, there's a lot of talk about costs, and I'd like to talk about our strategy in terms of funding our long-term projects. When Isabel spoke about the timeframes here, she's talking about this is one step in a very long series of steps. And if you look at the report here, it's not meant to be a final fait accompli, every question answered type report. What we're doing now is we're looking at moving forward, seeking funding from the end of the project, when we've got all of that, when we spent all the money to get the development and get all the designs and look at that and finalise process. And we're looking to move that back into the middle of this type of, or the start of it. And that makes so much sense from a council point of view. And I think that the questions surrounding the costs and surrounding the environmental nature of it, there are some unknowns there. And that's why, if you look at the motion that Councillor Piggott crafted, it has all those subject twos. And all those subject twos qualify our participation in it. And a big one of those is to reduce the overall cost of the build. I think everyone's mentioned that, including the clubs, including the administration, and every single councillor here. We all understand that $8 billion isn't that final price. But also what we should be looking at is we need to build to an objective. So first of all, we need to think about what do we need to accomplish and what is the list of that, and how do we design a facility that meets those objectives. The other way of doing it is how do we build to a cost? And if you're limited to say 5.4, if you're limited to 4 or 2 or whatever number you pick, what you're not achieving is you're not looking at that larger vision and aiming towards it. Now, I've spoken with Isabel already and the clubs, and even the photo that's included in our brief, that's not what it will look like. It's the kind of that first step, it's the first run at it. And what we're doing is we're changing our focus and we're letting that design and development process, and there's so much to be worked out about, say, the management of it and that criteria, but let that run concurrently with the application to the federal and state governments, so that in two years' time, we're not looking to start that application process, but it would have finished and we would have money on the board when we finish approval. And all of this will come back to council for our final view. So if there's things that we're missing, we can make those tweaks and changes. But I think we're in a dream position here, politically, and also with our current climate. The government's looking to invest, and I think we should, and I'm hoping to seek your support tonight for that.
Thank you. Councillor Henschke, you're next.
Thank you, Mayor.
Then Councillor Henschke.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. The statement on page 237 of the frequently asked questions says that item 4, no grant funds have been applied for at this stage, as it is required that the plans be finalised. So this means money is needed to develop a project. So I would think we need to be quite clear to our ratepayers that we probably have to, as a council, be transparent about probably this year's budget, $100,000 towards this, towards helping finalise the plans. And so my question is, so my question is then, will we be committing to some project development funds in this annual budget towards developing the project?
So that it can meet this.
So through Madam Mayor, I'm not envisaging recommending to council that any funds be allocated this financial year towards what you're commenting on.
Thank you.
Do you have another question or?
And that's all, thank you.
All right, now Councillor Hughes.
Thank you. I guess was in a similar position when I first read the report and saw the $2 million, and I guess that wasn't my recollection of the conversation that was at the cricket club before the election. But I guess on reflecting over the last few days and having read the report, I guess I've been thinking, I've struggled with the last 2 years of what we've achieved. And I know that sounds a bit silly, but some things are pretty slow moving around here. And I guess I've been thinking about the legacy that I want to leave as a councillor. And I've sat on the other side of the council decision around club rooms as a member of a hockey club within the city of Burnside many moons ago when I was a young athlete. So I know what it's like to have substandard facilities. Sorry?
You're still young.
I'm still young. Thank you. Youngish. I know what it's like having a club rooms with substandard facilities or even no facilities. And so for me, I don't think this is about throwing money around. I've been thinking about it in the sense that there will be a real benefit to the wider community by having these sporting organisations there. And I think, I think back to when I played junior sport and having those good facilities and going to those good clubs. It's all about bringing the community together, and you get families out there, you get young kids running around watching sport. And I think in this day and age, it's so easy for young kids and people like myself to sit at home, watch a bit of Netflix, but to actually get out and play activity and play team sports, it has benefits on multiple levels. So I think one of the things I was uncertain about, and it was perhaps unclear in the report, was how this facility would be managed. And I think some of the amendments that Councillor Piggott has made really addresses this. And I really would like to see this being driven, I guess, by council as a hub for the benefit of the wider community. And I thank the cricket club and the rugby club for acknowledging that in their presentation this evening, because I think if they hadn't made that point, I probably wouldn't be as supportive of it. But I think, acknowledging that this really has to be something for the wider community rather than just two clubs is really key to getting council on board with this project. I would also like to see, I guess, an expression of interest sent out as the project progresses to see what other interest there is in the wider community. We've heard about Strength for Life, but I'm sure there would be other community groups and perhaps other sporting clubs that we've already seen from the emails this week that would be interested in this. And I think as a council, there's an opportunity for us to try and meet the needs of more groups within the community. So I guess, when I first opened the report, my initial response was, wow, that's a lot of money. I don't think I can support it. So over the last 4 days, thinking about, well, how would I feel if I was a member of that club, or if I was a parent of a junior in that club, and really thinking about the benefit that this type of facility will bring to the city of Burnside. So I will be supporting it for those reasons.
Councillor Piggott, you put your hand up but then took it down.
Moment's passed, thank you.
So you were passing on that, or did you want me to
No, I had a
give you the
follow-up
opportunity
question.
to ask a question?
No, it was a question, but yes,
It's
moved.
passed now?
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you though.
Councillor Henchy?
Yes, thank you. I did have another question I saw, and Councillor Hughes' statements there have prompted me to ask it. And it is in relation to, and I agree with Councillor Hughes, the project management story isn't clear to me here, but again, I guess I'm assuming not assuming like Councillor Hughes, but it will be project managed, the stakeholder requirements will be found, we've come up with a business case with the benefits for the project and creative, perhaps, outcomes. You know, and it's not just a building for storing the cricket balls in it. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, through Madam Mayor, I think you'll find as part of certainly the funding applications to the state and federal governments, the club will have to articulate very clearly one the construction and the management methodologies, but also the community outcomes that are achieved. So I'm confident.
Yeah, because if I just think about it, it would just be amazing, the tourist opportunity, as a destination. It used to be a destination years ago. So I'd like to speak to the motion finally and make those remarks that it is a gem of some lovely history, and I think it's a wonderful opportunity. I do hope that lots of funding comes our way. Thank you.
That would be the ideal. Okay, I don't have any other names down here, and I think. You are the
Shall I speak just for completeness?
Yes, looking forward to it.
Councillor Jojo, I have been waiting, and I just wondered whether you were going to respond.
I think if these two clubs can get $6 million from the state government and the Commonwealth government, that would be a cracking result, frankly. And I think the stars are aligned for Burnside Council in a way they're probably not likely to be, ever again, possibly. So let's seize the day. $2 million, I agree, is a lot of money, but we would get, for $8 million, for the maximum $2 million, we'd get a fabulous facility. You'd think it would be quite a bit less. But so, yeah, I think I'm in favour of it, and vote for old Coles money next fortnight.
And perhaps a little bit of extra funding through fundraising might not go astray if they've got a couple of years to develop this, to get that additional money if they really want the top-notch quality product.
Yeah.
Councillor Piggott.
Thank you. Look, thank you for all your. That was an excellent debate. I would like to just address a couple of issues that Councillor Dawes raised the issue about Old Collegians going in 2 weeks' time. Unfortunately, I think in this job, opportunities, you don't necessarily choose the timing of opportunities, and sometimes they do come like London buses, none for a while and then 3 at a time. So. And I think given what the CEO said about perhaps a policy that he would float anyway was around the 25%, then, I think perhaps I don't think we lose anything by grasping this opportunity tonight as it's been presented to us. So from that point of view, I do share the sort of uncanniness of the timing of it, but I feel it wouldn't be appropriate to not do this tonight. And I don't feel it compromises Old Collegians for 2 weeks' time. In regard to setting a precedent that Councillor Turnbull raised, one thing that's come out of this last couple of weeks, I think that the clubs are keen actually to not be sort of on a different team necessarily. They're keen to work with council on this. And that's been shown really in that there was a number of things that were raised by elected members primarily in regard to things that needed to perhaps be addressed at this point. And every one of them has been accepted by the clubs. And in fact, in the deputation, Isabel Redmond made reference to all of them around the environmental requirements, around the future management of it. The clubs are keen to work very closely with council in getting this moving forward, and that includes what the project ends up being, what it looks like, and how much it costs. So whether it is an 8 million asset in the end, I think that is actually a pretty good precedent, because if it was 8 million, it would be 8 million value in a community asset that we would have bought for 2 million. And so if the precedent is our community clubs coming to us saying, look, we want to have a crack here. We need you to step up at the start and say you're behind us, you're with us, and we're willing to go out and get the other $6 million to get an $8 million asset that perhaps nearly half the time could be used by people other than the clubs. then I think that's a really good precedent. I think that's a precedent we should be setting, and we should start tonight. So I seek your support.
Those in favour?
Yeah, I got the other six.
We don't have better than that. There are no other business that I'm aware of.
Yes.
We've got a vote. Oh, yeah, I've got the voting. Shall we have a break? Or do you want to go straight into it?
Yeah.
Break now. Okay. 10 minutes, we start at 9 o'clock, which is slightly more. And so we don't have to move, restarting, and we're restarting with, I think, two motions that, two reports that were withdrawn by Councillor Levin.
Thank you. Now, I've read, and people can disagree with me, I've read this very thoroughly, and I move, point one.
Now, what page are we on, sorry?
We're on page 89. Consistent, oh, well, I won't read it out, that Mayor Monceau is our first choice of the person that we're going to nominate for Garrock. And I suggest that Mayor Jane Claire Wisdom from the Adelaide Hills Council is the second choice. And the reason I suggest that is, I'm very happy to have had a thumbs up from the Mayor just then. The reason that I suggest that is that...
No, I'll give an explanation, a comment. I'll get a comment later.
That when I look, actually, should you be in the room?
Yeah, there's no money.
Oh, okay. But there's prestige.
Just more work.
The reason I suggest that is when you look at the candidate information sheet, she has got a seriously impressive CV, and she is also a chef. We could have either of the men. One has been probably on the LGA since 2003, and the other not. But I think this council can make a stand for equity, equal opportunity, and equal opportunity, and positive discrimination, affirmative action, and women in leadership positions, which is why I suggest Jane Claire. So that is what I move, and I hope you support this.
Councillor Davis.
I support this for none of those reasons. Maybe the first couple of reasons. That she does have an excellent CV. I think she's close to us, and particularly I think it'd be excellent for the Adelaide Hills Council to be, on Garrick as well. I think that she'd be an excellent candidate for it, and I'm more than happy to second Councillor Lemon for those reasons.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Councillor Turnbull.
I really can't understand how that's equity to have two females. Please explain it to me because I don't get it.
Affirmative action.
Hang on, let Councillor Turnbull speak.
Affirmative action went out a while ago. We are actually quite equal now. But to say that's an equity issue and have two females, no.
Okay.
That's I have my say.
Is there anyone, Councillor Piggott?
I'd just like to support Councillor Turnbull. On the candidates, I don't have a problem with the motion as it's raised. I feel the fact that she's a woman doesn't really come into play. The two that we're putting up are the two best candidates.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? I'd just like to point out why, one difference, I'm not telling you or convincing you, but what I notice about this is that all of the other candidates are on ERA. Therefore, any one of us who got chosen out of the other five all have the opportunity to represent to Garrock through ERA. Adelaide Hills is the only council who is not on ERA and therefore does not have a voice on Garrock potentially. Whereas any one of us, and it might not be me who's elected because there are five of us, all have that, sorry, four of us, all have that opportunity to represent Garrock, to represent all the other councillors who are on the ERA. So that's just a comment I wish to make. So
can I sum up?
Yes, you can sum up now.
Thank you. I thank you for your support, but I really must say this. I really must. During COVID and our economic downturn, the number of women on ASX 200 companies has gone down significantly. To say that we are equal is to be dreaming. It has gone down significantly. And just today, ABC News Online, our very own government, the state government, its number of women in the party and on the front bench has gone down significantly. So I'm very happy to actually be pro-female because they have to work that much harder to get there. As Ginger Rogers said of Fred Astaire, she was much, much better than him because she did everything he did, but backwards and in high heel shoes.
Yes, I remember that.
So I hope you support this.
Thank you. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Now, the second one is also yours, Councillor Lemon.
I just need to find the right page.
That's all right.
Bear with me for a moment.
117.
So we're looking at 117. I recommend that this council endorse Mayor Karen Redmond from the City of Gawler for that position. So I recommend that her name be filled into that blank spot. And the reason that I say that is Karen Redmond has been the Mayor of Gawler, has been a councillor in Gawler since 2010 and has been the Mayor, I can't remember for how long, but I think she's in her second term. She's in her second term. She's also been a member of the LGA for at least this term of office, but potentially I think she may well have been on it before. The thing about the LGA is I think it's very important to endorse someone who has experience on that board already. And the reason I say that is this is not the place to give somebody else a go. This is the place to make a very sensible decision because what we've got coming up in the next couple of years is local government reform. We've got the planning and design code being implemented within the next 2 years, one imagines. So what we need is someone that's actually got runs on the board and understands how the LGA works. And she's been deputy there for some time. So I actually think of the people that we could choose for that position, she is the best place to serve our needs on the LGA, and I think she will do an excellent job on our behalf. So I hope you also support that.
Councillor Hughes, you wish to second it?
Yes, I'm happy to support this. I actually went to a seminar before I ran for local government, and Karen Redmond was a presenter at that, and she spoke exceptionally well about her experience of running for local government. I think you don't always judge these things on someone just being a nice person, but I think she presented well, was obviously professional, and for all the reasons that Councillor Lemon has said, I'm happy to second this and endorse her nomination.
Councillor Davis?
Yeah, absolutely. I think also that she's actually chaired GAROC as well. So I think that it shouldn't just be about giving people a go. We need to look at the candidates there and select the best candidate for the job, not just because, these are not throwaway positions, and no position is a throwaway position. And particularly her interesting heritage, I think, especially now that the Development Act has changes, I think that we need someone who is hot on that language to do that. So I'm more than happy to support her as well.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak?
I suppose I will. I'm also going to support this motion, and similarly because it's the town of Gawler is going to be the largest development growth, with potentially 100,000 sort of properties out there shortly, and it's going to put that place on the map. And I believe that the town of Gawler needs a seat around the table and a significant seat during that period. So I'm happy to support Karen to give that council in that region and those issues that will happen out there gravitas. So I'm very happy to support that.
Right, if there's no one else who wishes to speak, I'll go back to Councillor Lemon.
You may put the motion.
Right, those in favour? Those against? It's carried. Well done. Now, close the meeting at 9:14. Oh, sorry, no other business? I didn't check. Is there anyone who has any other business? All right, I will now close the meeting at, I'll give that clock, it's 9:13.
Where's my clock?